Week 9. A lot of little bits and pieces that go toward the complexity of getting the price of your product just right. I want to give you a little example. I know you've got a couple in the learning materials, but I want to tell you about Marco. Marco, a friend, ran and still does, run a business in security for businesses. And a couple of years ago, I began to get a little bit of a picture of what he did. Not a lot, just a bit. And what he did was, he was at the front end of the pack when it came to this sort of thing. So he was probably a bit ahead of his competitors. But he did things like video surveillance, the property, the premises, grounds, etc. He did stuff that was computer-based, a little bit tech-end with regard to security. And one of the things that he also had in the mix was he had the little fob that would go on the end of your key ring that you would just swipe at a door instead of using a key. It was relatively new at the time. It wasn't really being used widespread. Great though, because it gives the business some indication as to when people are coming, when they're leaving, who is actually there. And it all gets recorded electronically, so good information for them. Now, these fobs probably cost Marco about $3 each, and well, everybody in the business needed one, so he would sell them to the business at $80 a pop. Yeah, that was 80. Why did he do this? Because he could. No, actually, it was because it had a greater effect on some of what he was doing. So his business, it was high tech, it was high end, it was high value, and therefore it was high price, and basically in that order. So each of the services and the products that Marco put forward to any of his businesses, they were, the customer was expecting that it would cost a fair bit of money. And of course that limited the market, but they were paying a premium. Now, to have the fobs at $3 didn't reflect the way that Marco presented his business. He presented it as polished, leading edge, and quite a professional operation. So therefore, when he charged the businesses $80 per fob, they expected it. So what have we got there? Perceived value rather than just covering a cost. Because the question, what does it cost, is not the same question as what is the price. Let me give you another example. One that's going to put a couple of pieces together and create the one set of price or prices. At one stage in a prior life, I found myself as, well, cellarman and barman at a particular funky little bistro, and I was in charge of the wine list. I wasn't given any directions, but lucky for me, I'd done some marketing at university. Note to self, edit in canned laughter. Anyway, I took the menu, the wine list, and I thought, right, white wines, red wines, I'll get the product straight. Heavy, medium, light red, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, a young Pinot. White wines, heavy, medium, red. Wooded Chardonnay, maybe a Riesling, a Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, so I've got my product. Now to costing. Again, I wasn't given any direction, so I went with what I thought I knew. I went, okay, it costs me this much to get it in the door. There's a few added expenses that go with it. There's some tax on alcohol, and then I doubled it. What did I do there? Well, I didn't really use the cost-based principle, although I made sure that I was covering the cost. I used perceived customer value. A little bit more about the bistro. The bistro was a bit of a new concept. It was fine dining, but it was fun. It was good service, good food, good beverages, and it cost a bit. And the demographic that came, which I knew because I was working the bar and the floor, it was evident that they had high disposable income. So they were going to be able to spend a bit of money. What about competitors? How did the pricing go with regard to that? Well, there weren't really competitors. As I said, a reasonably new kind of dining experience. Yeah, sure, you could go down the street and you could get a pub meal. You could go the other end and get a Chinese meal. And there were some other eating possibilities in the street, but not really any like this. So I wasn't having to take into account too much of what is a competitor doing. So I took this and I went, there's not only some money to be spent by everybody that comes in, but there's a different lot of age demographics. And people in their early 20s will buy in this range here. However, I know that there's another demographic, which is professional and middle-aged, and they might come in and they're going to go, right, it's a special occasion, or I want to impress my friends, or it's something special. So I took this and I did it again up here as a premium range. Same principle, same kind of mix of products, but premium range, and I priced it the same. Except I made a little tweak around the top. Anything that was really special, I put an extra markup on. Well, hey, Bollinger non-vintage champagne is going to cost a lot of money. Everybody knows that. But in this particular bistro, you're going to pay a little bit more. Did that work? Well, given that there were a lot of people that wanted to come and they were booked out most nights of the week, it did work. And it was a reflection again of the target market. And there was a little scene. And it was great to be seen. So people that went there, they knew that they were getting good food, good wine, good service, and they knew it was going to cost them a bit more. If they didn't want that, they'd be eating down the street at the pub. So yeah, that worked. I also took the bottom end and I tweaked the bottom as well. And I went, I'm going to create a little base, a little threshold that people won't go below. What do people often do when they go to a bar or a restaurant? They go, I'll have a glass of the house, thanks. Why? Well, it's fairly inexpensive. So what I did was I went, first of all, here's a good red, here's a good white, moderately priced. But instead of pricing it here, where the pub down the street is going to price, I'm going to price it up here. And it's the cheapest wine on the menu. Now, I did do another little thing, and that was I took, say, that was the price of the house wine by bottle and by glass, and I went, the bottom three wines, they're all very closely priced. The house wine's the cheapest, but the next three are only within $5 or $7 of that bottle of white wine that's the house wine. So I sort of softened the blow a little bit. Sort of a version of preferential pricing. Did it work? Well, the owners never gave me any grief over it, so I assume it did. What did we cover there? Well, it wasn't cost-based pricing. It was perceived value. It was looking at the target market who had money to spend. I catered for the two major age groups and took into acknowledgement the fact that there probably wasn't a competitor that I was wrestling with and could push those prices up a bit. I think it worked. This week's activities, starting with the learning materials. I think they're probably worth reading through a second time because there's a couple of things that you probably need to work out whether they or how they fit together. Like under the Marketplace tab, there's a good article on 8 psychological pricing strategies. See whether they fit or how they fit into the internal and external pricing factors that you would normally take notice of and price according to in the learning materials on that front page. The activity, I thought there was a really interesting fact in that little blurb on Dick Smith that gave me a distinct point of view when it came to how to price those chocolate biscuits and whether to or whether not to. I'm going to leave it to you to make a decision, and maybe I'll see it in a post. Speaking of posts, by all means, guys, contribute and respond to each other. It's just not about you to me and me to you. It's about you people to each other. Suggest something that could be built on with regard to someone's posts. Tell them if you think they've done a good job. Tell them if you think there's something that they haven't taken into consideration. It all builds up our group knowledge. Lastly, if you don't want the video posts, I can take the criticism. Just say so on the discussion boards. Because if you don't, I'll see you soon.